Welcome to a simple JavaScript tutorial application. We're going to be building a JavaScript application out of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, of course, and we're also going to be discussing how to deploy it to a solution like Heroku, and then we're also going to see how to create a Docker file to containerize the application. So it's going to be super simple, and it's going to involve a lot of exciting technologies, and it just so happens that when I was thinking of the idea to create this app, Docker actually got released as a beta kind of solution for the Apple M1 processor. So we're gonna get to see how Docker runs on M1, which is pretty cool. All right, I'm Taylor Brower, and I am a full stack software developer living here in Texas. Okay, now with the introductions out of the way, let's start coding. So first off, this is what we're gonna build. It is called JavaScript Parser, or JavaScript File Parser. Okay, so how this app works is we're going to, let me refresh, be sure that it's loaded. You can see that we're hosting here on Heroku app. So we're gonna enter a word, say like test, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna just upload a file. And this file has a series of, you can see here, it says this is some test content in test.txt file. And you can see that it we found the word test in this file 2 times, okay? And then that's pretty much it for the main functionality. And then it has like a little contact button here you can click, and then it has various links to my social media, but you can put in whatever you want here. So we're gonna see how we can actually build this application. All right, so first things first is head on over to my GitHub to download this starter code that you need. I have it on the starter code branch here. You can see there's also a code complete branch, and main has the code complete too. So if you don't want any spoilers, don't start there. Start with the starter code. So yeah, once you click that, you can find the link to my GitHub down in the description. I'll have a link there to where you can find this and various other resources for the project, like the image that I used and the text file. That's all in the link in the description, so be sure to check that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to clone this. Just clone it with HTTPS. So right now I just have this repository as private because I haven't uploaded the video yet at this point, but by the time you watch this, it will be uploaded. Just clone through HTTPS. So we'll go ahead and copy that link. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up our iTerm, and we're going to go to just our desktop here. Now you can put this anywhere you want. I'm just going to put it in desktop, and you need to have a Git account. You need to set up Git account on your computer and set up things like the global variables, like your name and your email, which also I'll have linked in the description how to do that. So assume you have everything set up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Git Clone and then the link that we copied. So I'm going to hit enter, and then it's going to ask you for your username and password. Just go ahead and type that in. All right, and once you do that, you'll see that we are cloned. So if we can see we have JavaScript file parser on our desktop now. So I'll just go ahead and cd into that directory, okay? And then you can see that we're on the main branch. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do git checkout, and then you're going to want to type in starter code so that you can switch to the starter code branch. Okay, now we're on the starter code branch. You can see if I do cat index.html, we should have very little in there. Okay, yeah, we just have boilerplate stuff. So we are in the right branch. And that's pretty much it for the command line for now. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up Visual Studio Code. You can do this in whatever editor you like. I just happen to like Visual Studio Code. I'll just put this up here for now. I'm gonna go ahead and go to File, Open, and we're gonna go to our desktop and JavaScript File Parser. Okay, we open it up, we'll go to Index, and we see we just have our standard boilerplate starter code. All right, so now what we can do is we could open up, say, our Finder here. You can see we have our directory here. We could go ahead and just open up index.html, and then here's your starter code template. But this means every time that we make a change, we have to like reload this, and I don't like doing that. So in Visual Studio Code, if you go to the extensions, you can see that I have a live server installed. I also have a link to where you can get this in the description, but you can just search for live server on the marketplace here, and it should pop up. It's by Ritwick Day. Okay, so once you have that, restart your VS Code, and then you'll see you have this little go live down here. If you click that, it'll start like a little mini server, and then it opens up in your browser here. Okay, so now whenever you make changes to the code, it will automatically update. Like if I say paragraph, hi, save, you can see we have hi there in the corner. Okay, cool. So now that we have pretty much everything set up there, let's go ahead and explore what we have here. So of course we have our index.html file with where all our HTML is going to go. We have Google fonts imported with Merriweather and Lato, because we're going to be using both. We have our script tag down here, which links to our app.js, which is where we're going to put all our JavaScript. And then everything here was pretty much generated with the boilerplate code. So if you go like doc or doc here and just doc tab, it will spit out this boilerplate. So that's what we're working with there. We'll go to app.js. This is where our JavaScript is going to go. And we're going to go to style CSS. This is where our CSS is going to go. I'll remove that. And yeah, we have our CSS here. So this means that we're going to apply a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and a box sizing border box to the whole application. Then the HTML is going to have that background, which we saw here, have that like nice linear gradient. And then our body is going to be using the Merriweather font. Our font size is going to be 16 pixels, 300 weight, and we're going to have a line height of 1.2. Very small stuff. This is just pretty basic customizability to get going. And then after that, we have our index.php, which is actually going to be used to kind of make a little PHP server to read our index.html. This is purely for deployment purposes on Heroku, so that it knows where the entry point is. And then after that, we have our Docker file. So here we're using just PHP. We are copying the contents of everything in here to the Docker directory here. Then we're going to say that that directory is our working directory, so that the Docker container knows. And then we're going to run our command php, which is going to run the index.php. So that's basically going to tell our Docker container where the entry point is. Okay, so then that's containerizing the app. Then Docker Compose is going to be used to basically spin up our server and spin down our server, so that we don't have to type in like a long Docker command every time we want to spin up the container. You can see that we're just using 3.1 of Docker Compose. We got our PHP service using PHP Apache, so that it makes like a little web server. We're going to say that it's going to be started on port 80 on our machine, and then port 80 on the containers machine. And then we're just going to say that we want to put all the contents of this inside of this directory. So all these files inside the var www.html directory for the Apache web server. If you want to understand more along this is just basically how this is the default location where Apache Web Server looks for files. And if you want to look at the Apache documentation, they have a lot on this here. So yeah. So now let's just go ahead and let me demonstrate the Docker container here. So I'm going to go to Chrome. Okay, so here we're running on our VS Code port. Okay, but say we want to have our 80 port. So we're going to say docker-compose up, and then we'll do a -d so that it kind of runs in the background. Okay, so that ran in the background, so it put us back on the command line. So if I go to localhost 80, there we go. There's our web server. So I'm going to just go ahead and spin that down with docker compose. Whoops, docker compose down. All right, and now it stopped. So we're back on our starter code. We'll just clear out the terminal there. We're not going to be using that for a while. We'll just close this. If I refresh it, can't be reached because we closed it. And we're just going to work off the VS Code terminal here. Okay, so let's get started by going into index.html. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of compare to our final product here. So I'm just going to put that there so we have something to reference. And then I'll just put this over here like this. Okay, so that we can kind of see them, side by side here. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we have this nav bar. Okay, so we're going to want to have a div here, and we're going to want to give it the class of brand name. Okay, and our brand name is going to contain our image, and it's going to contain our name as well. So we're going to go ahead and say image. And then we're going to give it an H3, and we're going to say JavaScript file parser. Okay. And now our image is going to come from our assets. We're just going to use this JavaScript JS SVG. So we'll go to /assets, and we'll do JavaScript SVG. And then here, we will say brand name logo to give it like an alt name. Okay, so we'll save that, go here, you can see we got that, very beautiful. All right, so next up is after this, we're going to make a UL, and we're gonna have an line here. This is gonna be our contact, okay? We'll just give this an ID, and we're gonna call this our nav contact btn, okay, because we'll want to make that a btn in the future. So we're just kind of laying the groundwork right now. If we save, we'll see that that's there. It doesn't look too pretty right now. So now for our section in our content, we're going to have a series of different divs to kind of section out our layout here. So in our first one that we're going to have is we're going to have a .file div, and if you just do .file tab, it'll make a div for you. So we'll have a .file, we'll have a .counter. Actually, before the file, we're gonna have a .search, right? Because we have a search field before that. Then we have a file field, okay? And then we're gonna have a counter. That's gonna be this right here, okay? And then next we're gonna have our results, which is gonna be the contents of our file. So those kind of 4 sections here. What happened? Space those out. Okay, and in our search, we're just gonna have an input. It's gonna be type text, and in our file, we're gonna have a label, and we're just going to say upload a file. Okay, and then we're going to have an input, and it's going to be type file. Do we need anything else here? I don't think we do. Okay, we're just going to leave it like that. And we're going to get off of here and look at what we have so far. Save that. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Oh yeah, we got the notification down there. You can just close that because we're not going to use any extensions. All right, so here's our input. We can type in whatever we want. We can choose a file. You can see there it is picking up the file, but of course it's not really doing anything with it right now, right? So next we'll have our counter, and for our counter, what are we going to do here? We're going to say that we're just going to have an h2, and we're going to say the search word, and then we'll just say insert word for now. Okay, the search word appeared, and then we'll say counter here times. All right. Search word, insert word, appeared, counter times. Okay, cool. We'll fill in these placeholders with the actual smarts when we get to JavaScript. Okay, and then our results. For our results, we're just gonna say we're gonna have a label here, and we're gonna say file contents like that. Right, and then here we're just going to have a div with the class of file contents. Okay, and then we're just gonna have a span here. We're gonna put an ID. This ID is gonna be called file contents. Okay, and what this span is gonna do is, this is how we're gonna render our file content to the DOM, because we're gonna use JavaScript to basically give this the file contents, and I'll show you that in a bit. So now, after we got that, we'll go down to our footer. We'll kind of make our footer a little bit here. So when we go down to our footer, sorry about that, we're just gonna say that it's gonna have a class of footer content. So the footer is kind of our wrapper. Our footer content is actually gonna be the meat of it, and I'll show you why. So we're gonna have a paragraph. We're gonna give it the copyright logo. It's just copy like that, and then we'll say James Smith, right? Okay, and then we'll have a divider there. We'll say span, and then we're going to give it an ID of current year. And we're going to do something similar to what we did here. We're going to replace the current year with the actual current year using JavaScript. So we have that there for now. And that is pretty much the layout. So if we go ahead and we do that, you can see it really doesn't look all that nice right now. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our style CSS, and in our body we're going to give it a background of white. Okay, so now we have a white background, and we're just going to leave it like that for now. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start styling some of this. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to our nav, and our nav is going to, let's go to our next.html. Okay, so we have brand name. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say nav, we're going to say display flex. Okay, and that moved our contact there. We're going to say justify content space between, which is going to separate out those two. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to work on is we're going to work on our brand name. So nav.brand name. I think we gave it a class name. Yeah, we did. Okay, so we're going to select that class name, and we're going to say display flex to level those out. And we will say that the we'll put a little space between brand name image. So we'll go to brand name. Whoops. We'll say dot. And if you want to really drill down, you can say brand name like this and then image. But if you want a shorthand, you can just do dot brand name image because it will grab it. And we want to set a height of 30 pixels and a width of 30 pixels. Okay, we'll save that. And that looks kind of small, so we'll do like 40. Don't want it like too small. Okay, a little bit better. And then we'll say margin right of 1 rem. Okay, so remember this, that we'll just make a little comment here. So 1 rem is equal to 16 pixels. Okay, so that's it. 1 rem is relative, so relative to 16 pixels. Okay, so if we do the math, if 1.5 rems, that would be 16 times 1.5, which I don't know what that is. It's like 28 or something, but yeah, that's how we would do that math. And we're going forward, we're going to be using rems to be relative to that 16 pixels. It's a nice way to keep everything scaled properly. Okay, so we got that. This is the result. Now you can see it kind of looks a little weird, so we'll align items center. That kind of aligns things vertically. And then we'll also kind of do the same thing here. Align items center. Okay, so now those are more aligned. And that's pretty much it for our nav. We'll just kind of make a little comment here. Space that out in our CSS, keep it straight in our heads. Okay, so the next thing we want to focus on is our container, right? All right, so in our container, we'll give it a width of 90, import width. Okay, that kind of scrunches things together. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's go to our nav. The next thing we're going to do in our nav is we're going to say nav dot, or we're going to say nav ul, right? And here we're going to say list style to be none. Okay, that removes the style there. And then also what we're going to do is, so we're also going to change the display of this to flex. Okay, and then we're also going to give it a margin right of 2 rem. Like that. Okay, so now that kind of gave it some space there. Okay, so we're doing good. We're doing good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our content. Okay, so if we go back to our HTML, our content is going to be, you know, everything here. So everything like here, right? So we're going to go back to this, and we're going to give it a margin top of 10 rems. Okay, and that's going to kind of push everything down. All right, so now let's work on our footer. Okay, so we got our footer, and we're going to say that for our footer, we're going to say that our footer is a background of E2, E2, E2. Okay, so that gives it a little background there. And then we're going to say that our footer contents. Okay, so this is the stuff inside our footer now here. We're going to say that our footer content is, we're going to give it a display of flex. We're going to say justify content center. Okay, and then we're also going to align vertically to the center. All right, and then we're going to give it a margin of 3 rems, like that. Okay, so nothing really happened right now. What we're going to do is we need to go to our body, and we need to say that this is going to be display flex. Okay, so now it's really weird. We got our footer on the right side. We don't want that at all, so we're going to change our flex direction, and we're going to say our flex direction is column instead of row. So now everything is kind of back to normal. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our container, and we're going to give it a flex value of 1. All right, and then we're going to say that our footer, our min height is going to be 5 viewport height, like that. Okay, now why didn't it push it down? Let's inspect here. Why didn't it push it down? Footer. Okay, so we didn't set a min height on the body, so I gotta do min height 100 viewport height. Okay, so now it's taking up the full width of the container. It pushes our footer right down where it's supposed to be, and now we can see that our content there is not really aligned. So let's go ahead and get that sorted out. Okay, so we made a little mistake here. We did footer dash content. You gotta do footer capital C. Okay, so little mistakes here and there. They're gonna happen. Don't worry about it. Just take it slow, figure it out. So there we go. Now that's center. Okay, so now we're gonna work with our content here. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of put a little comment here. And I'll say that this is our content section, and then this is like our footer section. Okay, cool. Now we got that, and now let's go ahead and start messing with our JavaScript. So we're gonna go into here. Okay, so now what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to assign variables to the IDs that we gave in our index HTML here. Okay, so our first one is we're gonna do not the nav contact button, but we're gonna start in our content, and we're gonna start working with this this input here. Okay, so this input is actually gonna need an ID. The ID we're gonna give it is, we're gonna say the ID is the search field. Okay, and now we can make, we'll save that style. We'll go into our app.js and we'll say const search field, which is not the same variable as what we named the ID. Is going to equal document dot get elements by ID. Then this is the ID field on the actual HTML or the DOM, right? So this is pulling it off the DOM. So now we have that. If we console.log it, we should be able to see some stuff in there. So I'll go ahead and open the console, and yeah, you can see that we have input text ID search field. And if we do .inner HTML, you can see we have nothing, but if we type something in, then we still have nothing, right? So this inner HTML is gonna get whatever is inside here. That's because whenever we load the JavaScript in the JavaScript app the first time, it's always blank, right? So there's not gonna be anything in it. So we'll need to set that field. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a section here called event listeners. All right, and our first event listener is going to be search field dot add event listener. We're going to want a change listener, and then we're going to want to say set search fields, right? So this is the method we want to call whenever there's a change. And this method has to go above the call, because by the time we get here, this already needs to be declared. So we'll go ahead and say const. This is going to equal a function. Okay. And it's going to have an event. So here's our method here, and we don't actually want to set the field. We want to create a variable called searched word, right? We're going to do document dot get elements by ID searched word. Okay, and we want to set the searched word. Set the searched word. All right. So now we're going to say searched word dot inner HTML is going to equal the event dot target dot value. Okay, and if we console.log the event dot target dot value, we can see exactly what that is here. Okay, we can see it's ASDF, right? And then we get a cannot set property of inner HTML of null. All right, and I'll show you why that is. So now we should be able to, let's try to console.log the searched word.inner HTML. Let's see what we get. Okay, it's not recognizing it because of that error. So what we'll do is we have search word here, so we need a place to put it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our index.html and see this insert word, the search word, insert word. This is where we need to place it. So we're gonna keep the quotes, but we're gonna put a span in here, and the auto completion might not work, so you'll probably have to manually type it out. And then we're gonna give it an ID of what we just said, the searched word. Now this has a place to actually put its object. You can see we have ASDF here, and now we have ASDF here. It is changing. So we are successfully setting that variable. Okay. So we'll go back to our JavaScript. We'll get rid of this. Okay. So now that is set. We'll say, we'll always give it a comment here. We'll say sets the searched word. All right. So now we also need another event listener for the file here, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a get rid of this, and I'm just gonna say search field, and then we'll say file field. All right. And we'll say search or const file field equals documents.get elements by ID file field, which let's double check that we named that correctly. Do we have a file field? We don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an ID on this. It is going to be called file field. Okay, because that's our input, that's what we want. And then we're going to add an event listener to the file field. It's going to be a change listener, and then we're going to say what do we want to do here. So we will say handle file actions. Yeah, we'll just name it that for now. And we'll say const handle file actions is equal to a function that takes an event. Okay, it because we're gonna want that. We'll console.log the event.target.value just to kind of see what we get here. And we're not going to assign a comment there just yet. We'll go ahead and save our index.html because we made a change there. Our server should be refreshed. Now when I choose a file and I do this, if I open up the terminal, we can see file field is not defined. Okay. Oh, well, that's because I typed in field. Talking and coding is not as easy as it seems. Okay, we'll save that. We'll choose a file, do that, and yeah, we'll see whatever the hell that is. That's kind of weird. Let's just do target. I don't know why it was saying C drive. Okay, there we go. Input file field. Okay, so we know that we are grabbing the field there. So next what we want to do is now we want to loop through this, because if I actually go to the target.files, you will see that we get an object here with an array of files and a length of that array. And of course we only have one because we're only uploading one. Some inputs have the option of accepting multiple, so that's why there's an array here. And yeah, we have a bunch of information like size, name, type, all the stuff that we can leverage to do something with our app. But what we want to do is we want to isolate this file first and foremost. So we're going to say for const file of files, or of event.target.files. Okay. Now what we'll see is if I console.log the file, we should see just that one. Okay, and there it is. We got it. Okay. So now we can't just operate directly on this file because this is all we get. We need to employ another JavaScript object or helper, whatever you want to call it, called file reader. So we're going to make a constant called file reader, and we're going to say new file reader. Okay, just like this. And now we've initialized this file reader. So init file reader. Okay, so now we can do something with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say file reader dot read as text. Okay, and we're going to pass in our file. So now what this is going to do is it's going to read the contents of the file. Right, so now it's going through and it's reading all those contents. Now, we can't access those contents yet. What we need to do is we need to invoke another function to see those contents, and that is FileReader.onLoad. Okay, and this is a function, and we'll give it an arrow. Okay, so now in here what we're going to do is we're going to say there is a result method that we can leverage on FileReader. So we'll go ahead and say console.log FileReader.results. Okay, and let's see what we get here. So I've refreshed, we'll choose a file, and look at that. We have the content of our file. So now we're able to get this stuff. So we want to put this in a variable. So if we go to our index.html, we actually want to put this inside this file content variable here because we want it to render out in this span. So we'll copy that, we'll go up here, and we'll say const file content is equal to document, same thing, document.get element by ID, file contents, okay? And instead of console.log, we're going to say file content dot inner HTML is going to equal that result. Okay, and then we can save that. Now, when we do that, we can see that it's rendering to the web page here. This is the contents of our file. Okay, so now we need to start splitting this up and then counting the occurrences of the searched word, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say our next step is to separate the words, and we're going to call this a word bank, and it's going to contain file content dot inner HTML, the contents of the file, and then this is just an array, so we're going to split, right? And for now, I'm just going to split on spaces, and I'm going to console.log our word bank here, and you can see what we get. I'll open up the console, and we will upload our text, and you can see it splits it out word by word, right? Okay, so now we have our different words in our word bank. I'll keep that console.log up here in a second because we're going to modify it, right? So we'll have our word bank, and what I want to do is I want to say word bank dot for each word, I want to basically increment a counter if the word is equal to the searched word dot inner HTML, because that inner HTML is going to get exactly what was typed. So if word equals search word dot inner HTML, then I want to increment the word counter by 1. Okay, so we don't have a word counter yet, so we'll go ahead and say counter here, and we'll say const. Actually, we're going to say let word counter equal to 0. It's just going to be simple 0, right? So if it matches, increment the counter, and we will want to then, after the for loop, we're going to want to set the count on the page, right? So we will need another variable similar to what we had up top. If I go to my index.html, you can see we have counter here. Let's go ahead and let's add a span. And we are going to give this an ID so that we can put our counter here. So we'll say word count. We'll go back to our, let's save it because we made a change. We'll say const word count is equal to document.get element by ID word count. Okay. And then of course we're going to say word count dot inner HTML equals the word counter. Okay. Looks good. So we got rid of that placeholder there. We'll say, we'll enter test here. We'll choose our file, and then we'll do this. And you can see that it appeared 0 times. Okay. So we'll try the, because we know the is in there. And you can see, found it 1 time. Okay, pretty cool, right? So let's type in this. I'll choose a file, and then I'll say test, and it found it 1 time. If I type in this lowercase, and I choose the file again, you can see it found it 0 times. And that's not right, because you can see here we have this right in there. So if we want to match on that, we have to 2 lowercase these. We have to 2 lowercase both of them, so those are even. So now they're both even. Let's save that, and now let's see what we get. So I'll type in lowercase this. Okay, you can see it found it one time. Okay, but what about test, right? We have test.txt here, but if we type in, we have to refresh this test. Okay, it only finds it once because it's only finding the test here. So if we want to split this out further, what we have to do is we have to actually put in a regular expression. So I'll start a regular expression like this, and then inside of this, what we're going to have is we're going to say we're going to find it once, and it's going to be all white space, and it's also going to be period. So it'll still split on the white space in between each word, but it will also split on a period. Let's see what that does now. So if I type in test, choose a file, okay, it found it twice because it actually did split on that period. And you can customize this any way you want to, so let me show you a more advanced example. So if I go to our desktop and we go to our Java FileScript browser, what if I put in the whole app.js file, right? There's 158 words in here, and it's splitting on each one. Like, it sees that equal and it thinks it's a word. There's lots of like pluses and stuff here. You can customize this to split really on anything you want. So I added a plus and an equals, and watch what happens here. So we're at 158. I'll save this, okay, and then I'll type in test, choose a file, we'll do app.js, and now we're at 145 because it's split out more words. It's not recognizing as much as their own unique word, and it's actually extracting actual words out of the document. So you can make this as powerful as you want. We'll just go ahead and we'll remove that. We'll stick with the period for now, because all we want to do is we want to just mess with our test file in our assets folder. All right. So now, what if you want to choose a file, but you want to choose like a different one? So we'll go to File Parser. We'll put in index.html, and you can see it's still saying twice. So a good practice is to, every time that this is initialized, to just set the word counter back to 0. Okay, and then we'll just say that the file.innerHTML is going to equal to nothing every time, so that it kind of like reinitializes our variables on every refresh, right? Okay, and then we can get rid of our console.log here, right? And we can also add our comments here to, let's say, parses a file and counts the occurrences of a searched word. All right, and now we're done with the bulk of our logic in here, right? So now let's just add a little bit more styling, kind of clean this up. So if we go back to our .content, let's look at our HTML again. So in our content, we have a search, file, counter, result. I'd like a little bit more space between those, kind of like we have here. Okay, so I'll put a .content, and we want to grab the, did I make it a class? I did. Okay, so we want the .search. Okay, and we'll just say margin, bottom, 3 rem. Okay, put some space there. We'll do the same thing for file, margin bottom, 3 rem. Okay, and then we'll do we called it counter. Okay, margin, bottom, rim, right? And now we're good. We'll just make a content dot, called it results. But we don't really need to add anything there yet because we haven't really done anything with that area. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. Let's save that. Now, if we want to get our container looking a little better, what we're going to do is we're going to add a margin around this of, we're going to say, we're going to go to our calculator, okay, and we're going to say that we want this to be 30 pixels. So we'll say 30 divided by 16. Okay, so that's roughly 1.8. So we'll say 1.9 rim. All right, and that gives us a margin here. So now we have that kind of border around there. And we want to have a border radius of about 0.3 rim. Right? So now we have our rounded look here. You can see in the corner here we're still a little bit, we don't quite have that border radius yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our nav bar and we're just going to give it some padding here. We're going to say padding to rim. Let's see what that does. Okay, so it brought it in a bit. Maybe it's a bit too much. We'll say 1.5 rim. Okay, so yeah, it kind of brought everything in, so it's not touching. We're still touching here. It looks kind of gross. And if you scroll down, we don't have bottom rounded corners down there. So let's go to our footer. We're gonna want to operate on our footer itself, and we're gonna say border radius bottom left radius, and then we want a bottom right radius, and we'll just say 3 rim, not 3 rim. And if you want to copy a line down in VS Code, it's Shift Option and then down on your keyboard if you're on a Mac. If you're on Windows, I don't know. And then here you can see now we have those rounded corners. So we're looking more and more like our actual app here, right? Okay, so we're missing our date. Let's go ahead and handle that. We'll go back to our app.js. We'll put another section here. This is kind of a cool one. So we'll say const date is equal to new date.get full year. Okay. And then we'll say const current date is equal to documents dot get element by ID current year. No, not current date, current year. All right. And we'll want to say that our current year dot inner HTML is going to be equal to our date. And I think this is what we named it in here. We did. Okay. So then you can see our server refreshed, and now we have 2021. And then as we get into 2022, 2023, it will automatically update because it's constantly hitting this function to get the full year, which is pretty cool. We don't have to manually mess with that stuff anymore now. All right, so we got that. Now let's handle this junk over here. We'll go to our style CSS, and this is our content. So what we kind of want to do is we want to have bring that in. So we'll do margin, our top and bottom, which is our first value, we don't want to mess with, but our sides, let's say we want like 13 rim. Really bring that stuff in. And then we messed up our top here because it overwrote it. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to do margin left 13 rem, and we're gonna have to do margin right 13 rem. Okay, there we go. So now that's kind of centered. That looks like a little bit too much. Let's just do 10. What did I do? Not 130. Oh my god, that would be too much. Okay, so yeah, that looks better. Okay, so now let's go to our search, and we are going to give this a display of flex, and we are going to flex. We're going to center it. Okay, so now that's centered. We have our file. We can do display flex. We can do justify content center. Get rid of that space. Okay, so that's centered, and we can do the same thing for the counter. We can do the same thing for the results. All right. So now all that is centered, looking pretty good, looking more like what we have here. So now let's just kind of style the search. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just kind of gonna grab what CSS I have here. I'm gonna cheat a little. So we have our search field ID here. So we'll copy that. Let's make sure that we actually do have that. Yes, we have our ID search field here. You can see it's put it there. It looks kind of stubby though. Let's do with 50. Okay, that looks a little better. All right, now file is going to be interesting because we actually have to change this up a little bit. So right now we have a label here, and then we have the file browser with the whole thing here. So you see when I'm there, it's highlighting the whole input. That's the whole input, and we cannot change the style of that input. So what we have to do is we have to bring this input into the label here. We'll put it right above the upload a file, okay? And now watch what happens when I click upload a file. It opens that input. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our styles, and right below here, we're going to pinpoint that input with CSS by specifying the type as file, and we are going to set the display to none. All right, we'll save. Now it's gone. So if we click upload file, it brings it up, and now we have complete creative freedom to do whatever we want with this, which what we're going to do is, I'm going to cheat again here. We're going to grab our CSS. Okay, and below our input, we'll have our file label. Let's make sure that we have that in here, label. Okay, we do not, so I'm going to have to put an ID equal to file label. Save it. Okay, we'll save that. And now you can see we have our button here, and if we want to get it to match our search field, we'll just say 50%, how that matches up. Now we're starting to look really similar to our final product here. The only thing is, if I refresh this, we have a placeholder here. If it will restart, the Heroku instances will spin up and spin down depending on when you use them. So we have enter a word. Okay, so we need to put that in ours. Input search field, we'll put placeholder called enter a word. Okay, so we got that. And then we have our H2 here for counter. We can go into our style counter. We can increase our font size to 1.5 rem. Okay, so that's bigger. let's see. Yeah, let's get rid of our margins here. This is kind of messing us up, right? Okay, so now it kind of has the full width. We already centered it, so we don't really need those margins. So that's there. So now we'll start typing in a word. We got that. Upload a file. We'll just this. Okay. We lost our file contents. Did we? Yeah, I think we lost our file contents. So let's go to results. And let's get rid of this. Let's see if that actually did it. Upload file, test. No, they're straight up not rendering. Okay. What happened here? Results, file contents, span file content. Let's go to our files not defined, handle file actions. Okay, so we have an error here. Let's go to our app, and it says app.js32 file enter HTML. Oh, okay, that's because we want file contents to be reset. Okay, so now we'll upload it, and now we get it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll move that back. Gotta be careful with your variables, because you change something and, you know, JavaScript, it will get angry. Okay, so we have our file contents here, and see, this is like right up next to each other, whereas like in this one, we have it down below there. So we'll go to our results, and we'll go to our HTML. And we're gonna wrap this in another div, and we're gonna call it results layout, so that we can apply flex to it to space those out. So I'll do this, that. Okay, so now the label and the actual file contents are wrapped in this result layout, and then we can go to our CSS. And we can do .content.results layout. Okay. Or more correctly, if we wanted to really drill down, we could do it like that. We'll do display flex, right? And now that should do it. Okay. But we have to change the direction. So we'll say flex direction column. Okay, there we go. Now they're stacked. See how that changes it vertically? Okay. So now we can kind of drill into our file next. So we have our file contents class here. We can use this to really style this. So we'll give it a background of black. We'll say that our color, our text color is white. Okay, let's see what that does. All right. We'll give it a margin of 3 rem. We'll say 2 rem so that it kind of separates it. And then we need a padding. So padding is inside. We'll do 3 rem on the inside. Okay, that's a little too much. We'll do 2 rem. Okay. And let's change our font family to Lato, because Merriweather looks kind of weird like this. Okay, so now we're Lato. We'll say font size is going to be 1.3 rems. Just make it a little bigger, more readable. And then let's see, we can kind of mess with this a little bit. So if I say RGB black is 0, 0, 0, you can see we get the same result. But if I had A and then 0.8, kind of lightens it up a little bit. And then we can kind of make our text green. So now it looks kind of hackerish, right? So if we go to our Let's go desktop parser app.js. Now we have like a readable kind of text here, right? And then the actual file contents name, all we really got to do is just, we can access it through results if we really want to. So content, we can say dot results label, and we can just say font size 1.2 rem. We'll make it a little bit weightier. Weight will be 400. Do that. You can see file contents there. And then let's just shrink this whole thing in some by 1 rem. Okay, that makes it a little bit more centered. Let's do it a little bit more. 2 rem, 3 rem. Yeah, you can really tailor it however you want to. And okay, that looks pretty similar to what we have. So we'll refresh, we'll enter test, upload a file, and do this. Okay, so now it appeared 2 times. So we're pretty much done with the implementation of our app. So now let me show you how we can deploy this through Heroku, and it's really easy. All we have to do is we go to iTerms. Now we're back to our starter code. Okay, so we've made changes all throughout the code. We just got to make sure that everything is saved. There it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, if you haven't cloned, you would do git init, which will initialize the repository as a Git repository. That's step number 1. Step number 0, step that I forgot to mention, is make a Heroku account at this point and get that all set up. You will need to enter a credit card, so keep that in mind, but Heroku is completely free. You don't have to pay. They do have paid tiers available, but you shouldn't need to do that. Certainly not for these purposes. And I'll have the directions, or I'll link the articles down below in the description, resources where you can find out how to get going with Heroku. And the Heroku documentation is excellent for getting started. So after git init, if you haven't cloned from starter code, what you're going to do is you're going to git add all. So add all the changes that we made. If you do git status, you can see all our changes here. And then you're going to do git commit -m, which is message, and you're going to say initial deployment, or if you spell it right, deployment. Okay, so this sets the initial deployment. Your code is now all committed in Git. You need to do Heroku Create, and it's going to create an app for us right here. So it just created Fathomless Brook, okay, and then a series of numbers. This is good. And of course, you can only Heroku Create after you've logged into Heroku, which you would have done if you set it up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do Git Push, and we're going to do Heroku main. So we're saying push to Heroku into the main repository. We'll hit enter. And that's it. It's done. You can see we have our URL here deployed to Heroku. So if I copy this and I go to this URL, there's our deployed app. It's as easy as that. Just pretty much a couple commands. Yeah, it didn't really do it. What happened here? So it's not going to work if you clone from my repository, because it thinks that it's trying to update my repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this a little different way. We're going to go into our file structure here, and we have the JavaScript parser. This is what we this is what we cloned. We're going to make a new folder, and we're just going to call this JS file parser, or whatever you want to call it. And we'll go ahead and we'll take everything in here, we'll copy it, and we'll put it in here. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and close this, because if you see here, this is what we deployed, Fathomless Brook, and then this is what we made, right? They don't match. So we'll go to, we'll cd out of this, okay, and we're going to go to our new directory, JS file parser, right? Clear. It has all the same stuff. You can see here we have all the stuff that we did, right? But the only thing it doesn't have is that it's not Git initialized. So what we'll do is we'll git init. Okay, so it initialized it. Now we're on the master branch or the main branch, and we're going to git add everything. We're going to git commit just like we did before. We'll say initial commit. Okay. Then we're going to do Heroku Create, which is going to create us an app. Okay, so now we have vast chamber. Now we're going to do Git Push Heroku main. Okay, if you get this message, then just change this to master. Sometimes it's main, sometimes it's master. I think Heroku is in the process of changing over to the new syntax, which is main. Okay, so now we have that. Now we get a new URL here, and instead of Fathomless Brook, well, let's just open a new tab. We'll put this in. Okay, and now we have our what we made. Okay, so here's what we deployed. Here's what we made. Okay, so now one thing you might notice is we have this square here. Okay, and we'll need to change this. So let's go here, and to remove that square, what you'll have to do is you're gonna have to go to your app.js, and we'll just make another const file contents, and we'll say document dot get element by class names, elements by class names. Getting elements by class names is an array, so we have to get the first one. And then, okay, so we have that, right? We still have the black box. We'll say file contents dot style dot display is equal to none. Okay, so now it goes away. So if we upload a file, we're gonna get nothing because it's not there anymore. So what we'll do is we'll go down here and we will redisplay the file contents when it actually has contents in it by setting the display to flex. Okay. Now we'll upload a file, and you can see that it's now there. All right. And if we wanted to, update this, ideally we would be in our other file. We would open up our other directory that we have. But for now, I'm just gonna go to iterm get status. Let's see. We'll go back into our JavaScript file parser, and we modified app and style. So if I go to here, JavaScript app and style, we'll copy those and we'll bring them over here. Yeah, we'll replace them. Okay, so now if we go to our JS file parser, we can see that those two files have been updated. And what I'm going to show you is that we can deploy those changes. So right now we still have the square, and we'll do git add, we'll do git commits -m, we'll say update black square, okay, and then we'll do git push Heroku master. Okay, and then those changes have been deployed. So it's refreshing, and you can see the black square is gone, and it's only until we upload our file that the black square with our content appears. All right, guys, and that's pretty much it. So now a challenge for you is to, play with this a little more, get the styles going more. Also, I left out the modal here. You can see this doesn't do anything, but in our demo, we have a modal here. So in the final code, you can see the code for that modal, but I left it out in this demo just to leave as a challenge for you guys. And yeah, so we saw how to create the app, how to set up our Git and Heroku environments to deploy. We saw the Docker file and the Docker Compose and how to spin that up. So we have everything covered, guys. Let me know how you like this video and give me your feedback on what you would like to see next. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'll see you in the next one.